Hey, Rob Gibson here with the Cross Ministry Group. I want to ask you a question. We've been talking about blocks, things that block us from God's love, from realizing God delights in us. And I want to ask you, are you blocked from His presence? And are you blocked from His presence by not really being present to yourself? One of the things that I'll propose to you is that the more that God is a thing we think about, or even studying the Bible, someone that we know only through the scriptures that we think about, He becomes an objective thing rather than a relationship to be experienced. And so I want to just encourage you, sometimes when we're thinking, we're not present to ourselves. This is kind of like when you're having a conversation with somebody, and instead of experiencing what they're talking to you about, you're thinking about your answer to them. And whether you realize it or not, when that happens, you actually leave their presence, not physically, but mentally, because you're in your thoughts about what you'll say, about what they've said to you, rather than experiencing the presence of that person. I would suggest to you the same thing can happen to us with our relationship with God and with experiencing His presence. And so this is one of the reasons on our weekends that we do so much to connect physically to experiencing the truth of the gospel and the love of God for us. This is why we use our senses, our sight, color, feeling, touch, all these sorts of things, because the gospel ultimately in our relationships we experience physically in our bodies by being present to one another, right? That's one of the reasons this video is like, well, maybe you'd rather be in my presence. Maybe it's why Zoom, it's like, well, Zoom's okay, but I'd rather be with my family or with my friends or whoever it is generally. So here's what I want to encourage you to think about. Being present to yourself, taking time to be still and doing something that, if you've been around our ministry at all, we do this thing called just breathing presence, of stopping, breathing in the presence of God, connecting to your body, and really just slowing down to the point that you feel your heartbeat. If you put your hand here and close your eyes, you can just feel your heartbeat. And as you breathe, you can feel your chest rise and your chest fall, and just becoming present to your body, because the reality is God gave you a body and He gives you Himself within you. Now, granted, one day these bodies will die and we'll be without bodies and we'll be spirits. But for the time being, we are, in fact, in our bodies, and He's given us our bodies. And this is one of the ways that we know we're present, right? This is one of the ways that we know we're present to somebody, is they're physically there. And so becoming physically there with yourself, knowing your heart's beating, feeling your breath, being still in the presence of the Lord, and waiting in silence rather than thinking, okay? Rather than an objective thought about what's going on, who is He, but just being still and experiencing God in your body, in your breath, in your heartbeat, and waiting on Him to meet with you. You know, the psalmist says, "Be still and know that I am God." That's in the midst of, there's a lot going on in the psalmist's life that he's like, I got to attend to this. There's a battle going on. But then the reality is, the psalmist also says, in the presence of the Lord is joy everlasting. And so if we can be still and just meet with our God, to connect to Him, not in our thoughts, but in our being, in our souls, in the very breath of life that we breathe in, maybe there will be a connection to love that you haven't felt in some time. I'll just share personally. I experienced this early this morning. I was sitting with some men. We were doing some presencing, just breathing in silence for a long period of time. Actually, it wasn't. It was like 5 minutes. But in that moment, it's like that stillness gave me an opportunity to connect with God like I hadn't in a couple of weeks, it felt like. Because though I've done this and I do this regularly, I wasn't experiencing the presence of God until I allowed myself to be utterly still with minimal thoughts except to just wait on Him. So I want to encourage you, be present to yourself. Be present to the breath of life that He gives you, the very heartbeat that is sustaining you in this moment, which is a gift of God, and just sit with Him and experience the joy of the presence of the Lord. Hope you have a good evening. God bless.